GM, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today is Tuesday, the 7th of January, and we're back above 100K, baby, on Bitcoin. So, congratulations, we've hit that milestone once again. Obviously, as I talked about yesterday, I did expect Bitcoin to trade above 100,000 in the near term, likely yesterday. So, good to see that happening. And obviously, we pushed right up to just above 102,000 yesterday, and we're starting to pull back a bit today. So I did talk about this sort of zone here being a potential danger zone, a zone that bears might look to come in. Obviously, we're actually, if we put on the Fibonacci tool just here from swing high to swing low, we've also come right into the golden pocket between the 618 and the 0.65 retracement. So obviously this is a bit of a danger area where I thought we might get some selling coming into the market, and that is what has been happening so far today. However, as long as we hold above this swing high here at around about sort of call it sort of 99 is pretty much 100,000. As long as Bitcoin can hold on a daily close above 100,000 and retain that six-figure handle, then I'm not too concerned. I do think we can go probably down as low as 99 today if we do get a bit of a sell-off and bit of a down move upon the US Open, then potentially the volume could push us down there. But remember, we are still on fairly low volume coming in a little bit higher than we've seen over the last week, which we'd expect. But really, I think from here, what we want to see for more confirmation that we are going to be taking out all-time highs is going to be closing really above 104. And I think from there, we're likely to see clear skies up to firstly 108,000 and then obviously sort of higher from there. I mean, it's all very good and well for me to sit here and say, well, we'll be more bullish when we get above 104,000. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be buying when we cross above 104,000. I think, when you're a trader, you look at what is good value relative to where you currently are, and you're always thinking about where the market is going to go next. So where do we go from here? Where do we go over the next few days? Potentially, if we see a pullback to 100,000, 99,000, that could be a decent area to bid in the anticipation that we then start to make our way up, get above 104,000, and then you're in a position with an entry that is well protected. If we do then come up to 108, back down to 104, potentially you can then buy that retest, add to your position. But obviously it means that you've then got a position that you've built from a lower price. That is why I was talking about adding positions here along this sort of longer term trend line in this value zone. I was like, look, I want to buy here purely because I don't think Bitcoin's going to go much lower. If it goes anywhere near 90,000 into the high 80,000s, potentially as low as this 100-day moving average, that is going to be areas to buy. And I'm expecting a big reaction. I'm expecting the bulls to come into this market and prevent prices from going much lower. So that is what you're doing as a trader. You're trying to see where is price about to go, what's going to be the next big move. Obviously, for me, the next big move after this consolidation was always going to be extension to the upside. And that's what I'm leaning on. I'm leaning on Trump coming into office later this month, for him to start talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve, for everybody to start getting excited, for volume to come back into this market in January, for fund managers, asset managers, wealthy investors to take a look at this and say, what's going to perform well over 2025? I want to get some exposure to Bitcoin. Look at the last year it's had. Look at the year before that. This thing is clearly not going away. We've got a pro-crypto administration now taking office in the US. We've got pro-crypto senators been elected into the Senate, into the House in the US. So, we're seeing this regulatory shift now from being very, very hostile to crypto, from things like Operation Choke Point to trying to strangle the crypto ecosystem, to now potentially the floodgates looking to open, and that all kicking off at the end of this month when Trump comes into office. So I do think from now until the inauguration, Bitcoin will trade higher. I'd be surprised if we're not above 108,000 come the end of this month when Trump does come into office before his inauguration date. I do believe we will be at new all-time highs, or we will see a new all-time high for Bitcoin. So obviously, they are more of the fundamental drivers that I'm leaning on. And then you look at the technicals and you look at the charts to sort of fine tune those entries. So obviously, this was an area I was looking to fine tune an entry. If we do see a pullback here down to 98,000, 99,000, 98,000 into one of these moving averages, obviously the red's the 50, the purple's the 20, one of these daily moving averages, then potentially those are my triggers then to say, look, I wanted a Bitcoin long. Bitcoin has come down. It's bullish. It's broken back above all of its moving averages. It's now coming in for a retest. This is a good entry for me to then hold into the end of this month, potentially longer than that, depending where we go from here, depending how much strength we see coming into the market over the remainder of this month. So just trying to sort of step back and give you a bit more of a perspective there. Obviously, I do look at the technicals, but I also look at the drivers, more the fundamental drivers. What is driving this market? What is the narrative? What is the macro saying? Obviously, we've got inflation. I think we've got PPI on Friday this week, at the end of this week. So again, that is going to be potentially a market moving number, because we've seen Jerome Powell flip a little bit more hawkish. Now he's saying we're going to be more led by the data. So obviously a cool inflation number. If inflation comes in at expectation or even better below expectation, I expect these markets to really, really fly over the rest of this month. Obviously a higher inflation number could be a bit of a setback. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a death sentence. That doesn't mean we're going straight into a prolonged correction or prolonged sell-off, but it could mean that we do get a move slightly lower and it comes down a bit lower towards 92,000 again, just to, I think, probably sort of shake this market out one more time before inevitably we do go higher due to all the other factors I've just mentioned. So, yeah, I've gone into a bit more detail today about my thoughts on Bitcoin just over the next few months, but obviously it's all relevant, right? So, yes, just looking at the liquidations on here, we've obviously, like I say, volume's fairly low. In moments of low volume, market makers do like to push the market around. It's a bit easier for them to push around. Obviously, they can target liquidity either side of price. And obviously, we've come down, we've swept the liquidity down at just above 100,000, 105,000. And I would think potentially from here, we now go and we target this liquidity just above yesterday's high. So that, I think, looks like a, one indicator fairly bullish. If we do come down a bit lower, even under 100,000, I do think there will be, traders looking for longs there, potentially then targeting the liquidity on the top side of this. So that's looking good. If we also look at the funding rate heat map, so this obviously shows us the funding rates. This is basically the rate of funding that traders who trade leverage on these assets have to pay to keep in their leverage positions. Obviously, if we are more yellow, orange, they are paying higher funding rates. This means there's more of a premium on being long. Obviously, if we see these lower funding rates, then there is more of a premium on being short. So obviously, if we're more blue, it shows that the market is, traders are sort of positioning more to the downside, which means there's going to be more liquidity above the price and vice versa. If we see overheated funding rates, it means that potentially there's liquidity under the price, and therefore there's the risk the market, if it did sell off, it would see then forced selling, as traders would be forced to sell their position. So where we are right here, we're definitely not overheated, which is good. We're pretty much bang on neutral. I mean, we've got fairly sort of dark bluey green colors, which is pretty much neutral funding. So in a bull market, this is very, very healthy. This is what you want to see. And again, this really does lead me to feel that we are on the cusp of a big move in the altcoins coming. Obviously, it's been a month now since we saw slightly overheated rates. I wouldn't say anything too extreme, but we did get a bit overheated early on in December. Obviously, the market has now been correcting for pretty much a month. So this is all really what you want to see if you're a bull here. Everything seems to be lining up. And of course, we've been through the start of the month. Potentially, we've made the monthly low already. We talked about yesterday how the lows for January in bull markets, when the market is in an uptrend or when the market is in a post-halving year, they usually come in very early on in the month. Potentially, the low has been put in on the 1st of January here for Bitcoin. So everything is setting up nicely. Obviously, I'm still expecting we could fall a little bit more here, but I also wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if Bitcoin does turn around and it pushes up a bit higher towards 104,000, even just above there, and starts to sort of grind on its way onwards and upwards from here. If we just actually flip over to the other chart where we've got the path, I think we can probably tighten this up a little bit. I won't do it right now. I do like to just kind of draw these and leave these on here to almost see how price action then compares to what the expectation is, rather than adjusting these sort of every single day. Obviously, at the weekend, we kind of said, look, this will probably come in as a bit of a higher low now, given the strength of this bounce, getting back above these two daily moving averages. But from here, I'd really be expecting price to probably come as low as, like I say, 99,000, potentially as low as 98,000, sort of testing the inefficiency created from yesterday's candle. And then from there, I'd really expect us to see a bit more of a markup into the end of January and obviously into Trump's inauguration. So I think I've explained my outlook on Bitcoin fairly well. Bullish, buying on dips. Um, like I say, a drop lower below this month's low, I'm starting to feel is very, very unlikely. The only thing that could potentially change that is going to be the inflation count, and potentially we do see a little bit of de-risking or a little bit of stalling in terms of the market, some consolidation here into Friday's figure. And if we come in either at expectation or below, I think that will probably be the green light then for the next leg up in the market. So going on to Ethereum then, Ethereum has also come up to its 618 Fibonacci retracement, which I did say would be the next target on Ethereum. So like I say, it probably takes a little bit of a breather here, maybe tests a little bit lower to the downside. Potentially this 50 moving average comes in as support, currently around about 3,585. So I would expect Ethereum probably to grind before attempting another leg higher here. And like I say, potentially that comes after Friday now with the inflation number coming out. I think if that is good, then these markets will all catch a bid. I mean, if it's a really good number, potentially Ethereum makes its way back towards 4,000 at the end of the week and over the weekend. And then we see, a really, really positive quarter for Ethereum. So again, as with Bitcoin, looking to position into any dips over the next few days in anticipation of what might come later on in the week. And Solana as well has kind of led this breakout over the last few days, obviously breaking out from this descending channel, starting to consolidate here. So again, any dips to around about $205 now, obviously retesting this descending trend line breakout would be definite buys for me on Solana. So Solana is really looking good here. And I think, look, if we hold this sort of $205 to $200 level, I really think, the next time we get back above this 50-day moving average, we should be attacking this sort of 235 level and then off to new all-time highs likely for Solana over the next sort of 2 to 3 months. I really don't see these markets hanging around here. So Solana looking good. Pepe also just consolidating, pulling back. We've seen Pepe, really outperform over the last couple of months. So just taking a little bit of a breather here, and I'm sure it absolutely will follow the rest of the market in terms of going to all-time highs. Like I say, potentially it dips back to around this sort of 1975 area, potentially slightly lower than that, reconnecting with its 20-day moving average. But yeah, no real concerns for Pepe here. I think it likely sort of follows the rest of this market, and Obviously, if Ethereum gets back above 4K, I don't see any way that Pepe is not coming back to retest its all-time highs and probably also moving higher over the next couple of months. So just checking in on traditional markets as well then. So the dollar, bit of a sell-off yesterday, seems to be trying to form a little bit of a bottom. Obviously, a couple of wicks here around about the 108 level. So potentially the dollar looks to consolidate a bit, tries to go higher. I really think the like I say, the market moving data this week is going to come on Friday with the CPI, PPI. So yes, let's see what happens over the next few days on the DXY. The Nasdaq then, obviously, good couple of days for the Nasdaq, good start to the week. Like I say, pushing into this descending trend line. So let's see if the Nasdaq can close above this descending trend line. Like I see, maybe it goes into a bit of a holding pattern with the rest of the market over the next few days, waiting for Friday's data. But like I say, I think as soon as the Nasdaq gets above this descending trend line, it's probably on its way to new all-time highs. I think that's fairly inevitable. And same with the S&P, same kind of analysis. We can see starting to see a similar setup sort of form here on the S&P. So break above this descending trend line likely comes up to test the previous trend line connecting the highs on the S&P. So obviously that type of move would bode well for Bitcoin and the crypto market. So finally, let's also just take a look at Bitcoin dominance as well. Obviously, this is our gauge of how the altcoins are going to perform against Bitcoin. And obviously, we want to see this coming down to really see a more sustained alt season. I do think we'll just probably see a little bit of chop over the next few days as Bitcoin consolidates and makes its mind up on what its next move is going to be. Obviously, if Bitcoin does rip higher and get back towards its previous all-time high at around about 108,000, I probably would initially expect Bitcoin dominance to go up, maybe catching this trend line. And at that point, I think altcoins would then really start to send and move much, much higher. So potentially, we see something a little bit more like this. We see a pop up to around this level. And then from there, we look to see the breakdown in altcoins. I mean, we could probably say it's going to be more like this. I think when Bitcoin does make its move, its sort of major move here, that altcoins probably won't look back when Bitcoin hits new all-time highs. Obviously, Ethereum's strongest quarter is Q1, and especially Q1 of the post-halving year. That's when we tend to get the entire biggest, most explosive gains across the whole cycle for altcoins. So that is really what I'm starting to lean into. I'm thinking any strength in Bitcoin dominance here is probably a decent, sort of zone to look to either flip from Bitcoin into alts, or if you've got sort of fiat available or stables available, start to accumulate more alts. Not that any of us are probably sort of holding too many stables right now anyway. I know in terms of my own situation, I'm pretty much fully invested. But yeah, I mean, if Bitcoin does pop up here and we see altcoins lag a little bit, then I probably will rotate a little bit more Bitcoin into altcoins. In addition to what I've done already, when obviously we saw this move up to 61%, which I did talk about potentially being a level to look out for in terms of Bitcoin dominance topping. So everything seems to be shaping up fairly nicely right now. The markets are looking good to me. I'd like to see a bit more volume coming in. Obviously, I would like to see Bitcoin start to make its way above our sort of resistance zone here, up above 104,000. I still think dips really are for buying, especially in some of the altcoins, things like Ethereum, Solana. I think are ready to really move over the next month. And I'm going to wrap it up there for today. So have a fantastic day, everybody. I'll talk to you all on the next one. GM.